So, another thing I want to talk about is just sort of mindset. And growing a firm has been my experience, others I've talked to. You have to grow as a person. If you can't grow, then your firm's not going to grow. What's been your experience, and how have you forced or created the personal growth that has allowed the business and other growth that you've experienced?
Yeah, you got to face a lot of your internal demons depending on, how much you want to grow your firm, because you really are the ceiling of everything in your life. John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, and that your belief in yourself and your worthiness of success, whatever success looks like to you, all of those things are oftentimes the lid in your law firm, because your law firm is just an extension of your beliefs about yourself and what you can achieve. So I worked with David Nagel. I've worked a lot with Steph Tuss. Those are two people who I think really have helped me work on mindset and stay really solid there.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. This is a podcast where I get to interview law firm founders and hear about the cool stuff they're doing and learn from the things that they've done along the way. So today we're talking to Hillary Walsh. She is the founder of New Frontier Immigration Law out in Arizona, and she's had a pretty interesting journey. We're going to dive into all of that. But Hillary, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us about your firm, what you guys do, and really, I'm also interested in sort of the structure, how many people, how many offices, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Very honored. So in terms of where we're at and structure and that sort of thing, we just opened our third office in LA. So that's exciting. It's in a suburb of LA, about 15 minutes from downtown. So I was eyeing how far away I was from the Lakers stadium, essentially, so that I could go check that out while I'm there. But we have an office in downtown Phoenix, our kind of original office building. And then we opened an office in Glendale, which is a suburb of Phoenix. And now we have our office in LA. So it's exciting stuff. And I was on our team meeting today, and we had 152 people on our stand-up meeting today. And we have a ton of people out for PTO for the holiday. So I think we're closer to 200 people than I realized. And that was kind of eye-opening, because I don't know when that happened.
Wow. That's all I'll say. So
wild deal.
A lot to talk about, but before I want to just jump into this new LA office. That's new to me. I didn't see that. So talk about what led you to open an office there.
A lot of data. So we wanted, my vision for this is to be able to help 1 million immigrants. And that's a really aggressive goal. And I want to do it in my lifetime. So this isn't necessarily the generations and generations of people to come. I really want to be able to say within my lifetime, we helped 1 million people get their papers. And it's very specific to being able to help the undocumented community who's here in the U.S. right now. So that's only a small fraction when we really get down to numbers of the undocumented community here. So it was we want to go where the people are. I feel like the Little Mermaid. I want to go where the people are. And I wanted to also be a place where I could get to easily. I love being able to be part of each area's community. And LA has the most undocumented people in a concentrated area than really anywhere else in the US. New York has a lot of folks who are undocumented in terms of population, but LA was a clear, easy choice for us because it's only an hour flight away. Who doesn't like LA? And then also the community for immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, is so supportive in LA. I really want to be part of that legacy.
Okay, so let's talk about the logistics of opening another office. Not just another office, but another office in another state.
In California.
In another state.
Out of state and in
another
California.
state, and yes, you're right, in California, which all sorts of little things you got to maneuver there. So maybe we take a step back and let's talk about opening your second office, which is fairly close, which probably, was there a challenge there to all of a sudden have to manage 2 offices? And I imagine these are real offices that people are in every day, not these sort of office
Correct.
locations. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're in here, and it was funny. We had our first like event, and it was not here in our second office, and it wasn't like a big event. I think we had like 15 people here. It was around Halloween, and we did like a little client get together. We had a DJ, and it was, looking back, it was quite hokey, but you know, you build it, they will come. And all the toilets got backed up. And so there was backed up toilet water,
Oh,
and we didn't have enough paper. I mean, it was a mess. And it was, thank God we only had 15 people, because if we'd had a real event and had like 150 people, 200 people, that's a lot more pee that would have been coming back up. So yeah, logistics of even just getting into our second building were challenging, because we were not over in this neck of the woods every day like I am now. I drive over here every day, almost 7 days a week. I rarely go to my downtown office anymore because I just have really rehomed over in Glendale. But initially we weren't over here a whole lot. And thank goodness I had decided to be a good person because I allowed, there were a lot of homeless or people experiencing homelessness kind of squatting at our building, and sometimes breaking in, and sometimes pooping and peeing inside, and sometimes doing some of the drugs that you got to leave behind needles for, and that sort of thing. So my husband had cleaned a lot of that out. He'd sent over an employee to do it, and that guy quit. Then we came over and went to do it ourselves and realized, oh, I see why he quit. No one wants to do this. So my husband kept the kids in the car, and he went inside, and he has a really bad gag reflex. So I'm just imagining, I thank God I wasn't here for it. He's like just making it happen. So these are the things that when you're like, oh yeah, we have 150 some employees, you're still like literally shoveling, you know what, sometimes. So that was an issue that we couldn't seem to get to go away. It kept getting graffitied and all this other stuff, and we weren't in the building yet. So I told this gentleman who runs a nonprofit that he could use my parking lot and my water to pull his pickup truck in, and it has a hookup so that folks experiencing homelessness can wash their clothes, take a shower, and get a haircut. So I told him, I'm not in there yet. Use my parking lot. There's clearly a large demographic of folks who are homing that property up. So he did that, and one day he was over here and he's like, Hillary, you have a huge flood going on inside your building.
oh my gosh.
And I'm talking knee-deep water that you could see from outside in the windows, like the Titanic scenes, you know, Rose and Jack are running through.
Wow.
So apparently someone had come in and stolen some copper off of the pipes. I guess that's like a valuable thing. They came in and just let the water run. So anyway, any of these endeavors are an experience for sure. So I'm just thankful that guy let us know, because if not, I really don't know what would have happened. The windows would have broken, the water would have spilled out. Like, oh my gosh. So that's Glendale. And we had lots of trouble getting the fire department to sign off and let us in here. And I mean, any city that you deal with, you have to follow a lot of odd rules, and they are going to tell you one problem at a time, not all of them. And then they're going to come back out and find new ones. So anyhow, it's been a similar rinse and repeat in California, but less so with folks breaking in and that sort of thing. So it's just getting permits from the city and figuring out where to place the signage. And we bought the building in July in LA, and I did a walkthrough last week for the first time. And I had seen the building from the outside, and I said, this is the one, let's do it. And then I went back, obviously last week, and we're in December, and I was just high from walking through that building, because it is exactly what we need, exactly in the right place. Like the universe called to me and I answered, and it's going to be so awesome. So all of the crap that you go through, like it will subside, and you'll do it again, and you'll just build a higher tolerance. Your gag reflex gets stronger, I guess.
So the first thing I'll say that you mentioned is that the universe talks to you. So that's good. It talks to me too. So that's good to know. But so you bought the building in July in LA, and you're already open?
We are open, but not in the normal sense.
Okay.
So we rented a Regis We've been dealing with city permitting stuff.
I was going to
and
say,
that's a whole thing.
lightning speed from July to now.
Yeah, no, we have a whole renovation that we're going to do. And I hadn't done a walkthrough to see what it was really like on the inside. Previously, it had been a sneaker store. The building that we're in Glendale that I'm recording right now, it used to be a pawn shop. And so it was just a big open area that had a front, and then they had a whole bunch of shelves that we got rid of. And then it was just a big open building, and we had to put walls up and everything else. Well, it's a tennis shoe store that they outgrew the tennis shoe store and moved down the road. And now it's just a big open vacant room, essentially. It reminds me almost like of a gymnasium, an indoor gymnasium. It's that big and hollow and everything else. So like all the dreams can come true in a space like that. And we had initially planned to do a full renovation, put up walls, redo the floors, everything else. And I was like, why? If our goal is to help 1 million people, yes, I want to give them a high-end experience so that they're in a beautiful space. I want to work and invite my clients to a beautiful environment. But like, they don't care. They need help right now. And so we're just going to set up tables and chairs. I had to, we got to do some stuff. It smelled really bad, like must. And like to the point where I got a headache from being in there for like 10 minutes. So we have to suck all the air out and give it new air, which I guess is a thing you can do. But other than that, we're going to be open for business, and we're closing down that Regis. December 31st is when our lease expires, and January 2nd, we're open for business in this other spot. The toilets work, the water runs, we're going in.
That's good. So I want to talk a little bit about the strategy and the decision making. So obviously you found, okay, I want to go where the clients are. So that's huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to have to sing it. I want to be where the clients are.
Well, you don't want me singing, that's for sure. So take me through sort of the process of, as you're thinking about expanding, where are we going to go? What did you look at? Did you just always know it was going to be LA? And then timing wise, when you're like, hey, we're going to want it to be this date, so then we have to buy a building by this time. And then, so take me through sort of the process of from thought to where you are now.
Sure. We knew that that's what we wanted to do, but I was very afraid that it was the wrong decision because I've never done any of this before. And I didn't know if the next best thing would be to go to Vegas. That's where I went to law school. I still feel very connected to that community, and all my buddies are still mostly practicing there. So it would be an easy step in for referral marketing, but it wasn't a big splash. Like Vegas is a smaller market than Phoenix. Anyway, we ended up hiring a coaching company. I would not hire them again in retrospect. But we spent a lot of money working with them on creating a 10-year plan. And it was good to do the exercise, and I still got a lot of value out of it. I just don't know that I got enough value out of it to justify the price tag. Nevertheless, working through that, it was so clear that this is where we need to go. In hindsight, what I recommend people do if they're wanting to expand, this is stuff that Louise Scott teaches in 8-figure firms. So it's not my original thought process, but it really is like when you reach a certain threshold on how much it costs to get a client, then you need to expand to a new market because you may be maxing out on the number of clients that you can reach in that specific area. So that's his analysis, and I just knew I wanted to be aggressive, and these are my young years, and I wanted to get going while I have the energy for it and all of that. So I used heat maps when we looked at LA, though. Those billboard companies have an incredible amount of data, and so you can just email any billboard company in any city you're thinking about expanding to. I'm fortunate because at immigration law I can go any state I want to and practice. But if you're thinking about expanding to other cities, they can tell you how many people drive by almost literally every billboard that they have. And they can tell you essentially who, if it's a Latino person or if it's everybody. And I'm sure there are other ways they can break the data down, but that is the best way to make decisions if you're wanting to know who is where and where you want to position yourself. So that's why we chose the place in LA that we chose. In terms of general zip codes and things like that, it was heat maps from billboard companies initially, and then also from independent research from this coaching company.
Well, that's really cool and exciting, and congrats. And hopefully that office just starts humming immediately. So
Yeah, I went out last week for my first day of consultations and had both people hire. So like both of them said they talked to over 20 attorneys over the course of their 30 plus years. And these were totally separate conversations. One woman was from the Philippines, one man was from Mexico. So totally separate, but very parallel lives that they were living. Talked to over 30 lawyers and everyone had told them they couldn't do it. And I was just like, how many times do I have to hear this conversation? And like that breaks my heart. So that's why marketing is so important to me.
I love it. So we're going to go way back. We're going origin story time now. So let's.
Oh, okay.
So we're sort of present day. Let's go back. So I guess the first thing is, why law? Why did you choose law versus something else?
I really think that law chose me. I was so drawn to the law as a kid, even reading John Grisham books, just burning through those, and it was so fascinating. I was never interested in medicine and that sort of thing like some children might be, like they aspire to be a doctor or a lawyer. I never really wanted to be a doctor. But where this really came into play was I had toyed with the idea of law school. Like you get a political science degree, which is what I accidentally got. I wanted to be a country music superstar, and that was my plan, or a jazz singer in New Orleans, and I was just going to love life living in a nightclub. But I ended up marrying my husband, but 20 something years ago. We met when I was 19 and he was leaving Kansas, and I also wanted to leave Kansas, and he was gainfully employed, and I was like, we should get married. And we did, and it's been awesome. But during that time, I went to lots of different colleges trying to get some type of degree. And at first it was like a performance degree. And then the next school, it made more sense to do music education because each school has its own little requirements. And then by the end, I had been in school for 5 years, in undergrad for 5 years, and I had been in school in high school, and I'd done college classes, like night classes, for so long, and I had really nothing but student debt to show for it. So I went into the college like recruiter office on base in northern Japan and said, what is the degree from any university that you can find, and what's the least amount of credits I need to do? And this was in 2005, 2006. So online schools were not super common like they are today. Troy University out of Troy, Alabama was so progressive, and they had a whole bunch of online schools. A political science degree from Troy University is what I ended up getting because it was the least amount of credits, and they obviously offered online. And while I was doing that degree, I you take these law classes, but I spent some time in Uganda because my husband was deployed. I had an aunt who had previously been a missionary in Uganda. I wanted to go do volunteer work and kind of do that and scratch the itch of my soul's yearnings in that way. And you get there and you see human rights on a whole other level. And that's where I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. And I had thought about the LSAT, and like mostly like from an ego place was telling people like, oh, I'm studying for the LSAT, carrying around the big Kaplan book thinking I was cool. And I got serious about it while I was there. And I was like, no, I really want to do this. So that was kind of like the beginning.
So you go to law school and you get out and you start out as a commercial litigator, which probably did not scratch this itch that you just described. So tell me about that. You start out as a commercial litigator. That didn't last all that long, I don't think. And eventually you left to maybe start this path. So maybe take me through that.
Yeah, I was graduating law school in Las Vegas in 2012. So the housing crisis of 2008 had ripple effects, and a lot of people were graduating law school and there were no jobs to be had because 3 years later, especially in Vegas, this was a really tough market. I don't know if she was in my year group, and some of it might be legend at this point, but we're going to say that it's true. But I believe that I had a classmate graduate, pass the bar, and she was a barista at Starbucks for a while before starting her own firm. So this may just be legend, but we're going to go with it. It was like that. I had applied at the Legal Aid Center to see if they would allow me to work for them. That had not worked out. And I didn't really know where else I wanted to work. I had not really thought about being an immigration lawyer. I had my eye on someday I want to be a law professor. So I need to clerk. How am I going to get a clerkship? And I hoed myself out trying to get a job so bad for any judge. Like it was all above the table hoeing out. I tried so hard. I interviewed with every judge. And every judge was so nice and they wanted to hire me, but I wasn't particularly a great student. I didn't have the polish of some of my peers because I just couldn't fake it. I'm not that person. And I hadn't done law review. So I just couldn't get a job for any of these federal judges that I really wanted to work for. And by chance, I did on-campus interviews with this commercial litigation firm and hit it off like peas and carrots with the guy I was interviewing with. I had a great time interviewing with all the associates they had me interview with. And little did I know it was like for a legendary lawyer in Nevada. Like he's the bee's knees. His wife is now a Supreme Court justice in Nevada. Like I really hit it off. They later told me that they didn't realize I wasn't on law review because one of their non-negotiables is everybody has to have done law review, because they were giving me all these edits on my citations. I was like, whatever. And they're like, how did you get through law review and you don't know how to do this? I was like, I didn't do law review. So anyway, I did that for about 14 months and had my writing completely brutally crucified regularly because it was a firm that is really, really well known for excellence. And that set me up so much for success for later on. I left only because we got stationed in Korea in 2014, before remote work was a common thing. So I'm thankful that I left because I was making great money and doing, work. But I finally got to be the immigration lawyer I wanted to be when my job was taken away from me and I was living in Korea.
So you started your firm from Korea?
I did.
Oh, that's cool. So how did you do it? And did you immediately pivot to immigration, or did it take some time till you sort of found that practice area?
No, I knew I wanted to do immigration, and the firm I was at, they had to create a company policy on pro bono work being applied to your annual billable hour requirement, because I had been doing so much pro bono work for immigrants who were victims of sex trafficking and labor trafficking and all sorts of stuff that was going on in Vegas. So they were like, look, we're happy for you to do this, but you also have to bill and pay for your salary. So I was obviously very called to immigration law. And then when we knew we were moving to Korea, I reached out to several major immigrant nonprofits and said, I will work for you for free. I will need mentoring. I will work for you for free. You will never regret this. I'm an excellent writer, but I want to sign the briefs. I do not want to be a ghost. I want this to have my name on it because I'm very proud of the work that I do. And everybody told me no, but one nonprofit. And that nonprofit was the Florence Project here in Arizona. And I worked for them pro bono, taking cases pro bono for about 5 years. And they mentored. It was amazing. And I got to sign my name on those briefs. And some of those clients, sadly,
go ahead.
Are still my client because the immigration process goes on for so long.
Oh my gosh. But so you were working for this nonprofit, but you were in Korea doing this, or this is?
Yeah, I was just taking cases. Like they would refer cases over to me as pro bono counsel. Like I wasn't on their payroll or anything like that, but they would just refer me cases. And that's how I learned immigration law, was taking appeals. And I would figure out and research. And it was a wonderful way to learn immigration law and have a really big impact because I was knocking them out of the park. It was so fun.
But this was really before, remote work, right? How did you make that work?
It really was.
How did you figure that out?
I figured out that I could have FedEx print and ship my briefs to the Board of Immigration Appeals. So, because this was, like you're describing, 2014, we were not doing the things that we are today. And I remember it took so long for a document to upload on the FedEx website for you to print it. And you want it to be stapled in this certain place and hole punched in this certain place. And then you just kind of had to hope that it all worked out, especially by your deadline. And I would call and talk to people and get up in the night because it was East Coast. And so we're very different time zones. get up in the night and call the FedEx people, explain to them where I needed everything, and then they would FedEx it for me. They would then put it in the envelope and FedEx it over to the courthouse. So it was a huge learning experience for sure.
Real quick, if you haven't gotten a copy yet, please check out my book, The Law Firm Life Cycle. It's written for law firm owners and those who plan to be owners. In the book, I discuss various issues that come up as a law firm progresses through the stages of its growth, from just before starting a firm to when it comes to an end. The Law Firm Life Cycle is available on Amazon. Now back to the show. So the early days, well, let's back up. So you started your firm with no clients, and you're like, all right, I want to do stuff. So you reached out to all these nonprofits, and only one said, all right, let's do it. And so I guess that's how you got your first clients, was through this?
Yeah, that's how I got my first clients.
Okay, how did you grow from there? How did you start to get your own clients, especially if you're in Korea? I guess at some point, obviously you came back, but take me through that.
The plan while I was overseas was never to have a law firm. It was always, I'm going to be a law professor someday. And so all the work that I was doing was I wanted to be an immigration law professor and teach a clinic. That was like the goal, because you can do real world stuff, but you're teaching young people. I was deeply influenced in law school by my clinic professor. Like, I regularly text her and ask for help on stuff because she's still like the smartest person I've ever met. So that was my goal. I was like, I want to be you when I grow up. I was writing law review. Here I was like making fun of law review in law school. And now I was writing law review publications and getting them in law review journals, because the professor track, they want to see that you are a published academic. So I would go to the base library and write. Mind you, I had 3 kids under 2 at this time.
Oof.
So it was, I'm like pumping out babies. I was breastfeeding, all this crazy stuff. And then when my husband would come home from work, and we're living in South Korea, the whole reason we're in South Korea is because we need to be defensively and offensively placed in case North Korea does squirrely shit. So there is all of that stuff going on regularly. And I look back and don't really know how it all worked out, but the plan was never to open a law firm. So the plan was never to get clients or to make money. Like, definitely had a lot of, I won't call them arguments, but I would call it stress around money, because paying for FedEx to FedEx something when you're living on one income, and also having to pay for the babysitter so that you can go to the library to write something that you're literally just doing this. It's like a hobby. It caused financial stress on us, but it was like, there was no stopping it. So anyway, I didn't really think about getting clients and opening a firm until I moved back stateside, and we didn't have money for good childcare. And I can tell a very, very, very sad story but the gist of it is, one day after being pro bono attorney Hillary in Eloy Detention Center here in Arizona, after we finally got stationed back in Arizona, I had been in court all day, and I had my 4th kid by then. And so I had all 4 kids in daycare. Daycare in America is very expensive. And one of them was an infant that was about a year old. Maybe he was 10 months old. Anyway, he was rolling around on the floor screaming when I went into the daycare. And it was like a VCT tile lunchroom floor. And he was covered, when I picked him up, he was rubbing his eyes, covered in this bleach water. They had mopped the floor and then laid my kid back in it, and he got bleach water in his eyes. Gosh. And the reason I had to pick this crappy daycare where they would do something like that was because I had chosen to be a hero and do all this work for free. And the real person who was paying for the cost of the service I was providing was my children, because they were in a crappy daycare. And that night I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I still do a ton of pro bono work, but that was after I had a business, and that changed everything for me. That experience with my kid.
You know, I came across an interview you gave talking about, I think it was your early days, sort of asking for money from the clients, and you had to create this alter ego because you maybe tell us that story. That really hit hard, and maybe it would resonate with some folks out there.
Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable being the lawyer who answered the phone and asking for them to pay to book a consultation with me, because clearly they could just call and I would pick up the phone. Why do I need to pay to talk to you? And so I would pretend to be someone named Sarah. And my aunt is named Sarah. One of my buddies from law school, she's named Sarah. One of my really, really good friends who passed away from breast cancer, her name's Sarah. So I ended up just being Sarah, and I would have a different voice. I would have the receptionist voice, kind of, cracking gum sound. And then I would collect payment, and then I would transfer them to attorney Hillary. And it was my own cell phone. I would just put them on hold by pushing mute and waiting a few seconds and then transferring. And then I would have to change my voice. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but I mean, that phone was my hotspot. Thank you, Jesus, for T-Mobile, because it was my hotspot for my internet research before I could have internet in an office. It was my mainline phone number. It was everything. It's really the only thing you need to start a law firm is a cell phone. And you couldn't do it. You couldn't be a dentist and say that. So we're really fortunate that there's such little overhead.
So you've come a really, really long way from those early days. We talked about at the beginning. How did you get there? Take me sort of through the progression. Early days, you were doing lots of pro bono work. You weren't getting paid what you should, stressing, all these sorts of things. How do you get past that and begin to grow the firm?
I really had a great experience working with How to Manage a Small Law Firm. I'm not connected to the organization at all anymore and haven't been for many years. But I called you look back in your life and you can connect the dots. There's a really cool Steve Jobs speech that he talks about connecting the dots in reverse. And it's so true when you look back and you're like, that was so perfect. Of course that's how that happened. It's really hard to think about that when you're in the thick of things. But when we moved back we were living in Korea, like I mentioned, then we lived in England for a year, then we moved back stateside. And we lobbied hard for Arizona because I wanted to work at this nonprofit. I was still not planning to have a law firm. I was doing a case for a guy who I needed to get an attorney to pro hoc vice me in Alabama, another Alabama connection, because that's where he was detained. I didn't know anybody in Alabama. And this is in 2018. This was before there were a lot of, or at least I knew of, Facebook groups, because I was not active on Facebook at the time. So I went on a listserv that I was on for a pro bono case that I was doing and just did a control find for AL, looking for the Alabama, the abbreviation for the state. Found one lady in this whole thing. I called that firm, ended up being a woman named Zyra Solano, her law firm in Alabama. I talked to her associate who was listed on this, her signature block had AL in it. She said, absolutely, I will for sure pro hoc you in, but you're going to need to talk to Zyra for her to talk to you about what all this will entail. I was like, wow, this is such a serious deal. And I got on a call with Zyra and I was so nervous. I don't know why, but the whole, you had to schedule a call and then you had to explain. And she had all these very thoughtful questions about well, how long is this anticipated to take? Anyway, I explained everything to her and she ends up just saying, dude, you just need to start your own firm. Why are you doing all this work pro bono? You should come to How to Manage a Small Law Firm and it's going to change your life. And I did, and it did. Coaching helped me a lot. Helps me a lot.
I talk to a lot of lawyers, a lot of successful lawyers, and all of them have coaches or have had coaches. I mean, they never stop. Coaches, consultants, groups, all the things. Mm-hmm. And, different people at different times because you outgrow and you need bigger things at some point. But very common story. So puts you on the path. You start growing. You're now 3 offices, 200 employees. You're rocking and rolling. So how has your role in the firm changed over the years? You mentioned the LA office and doing the consults. Is that just because you're getting the office off the ground? What's your day-to-day like nowadays?
My day-to-day is really hectic right now, and I'm working more now than I think I did even when I first started, which is not ideal, but it is the truth, because I could tell you a whole story that maybe would make me seem cooler than I am, but it's not cool. I'm onboarding a new sales director. We had a marketing and sales director combo role it was not a good, it was a year of someone in that position. And it was an unsuccessful placement. And I did not know that for quite a while. So I just got he's maybe a month on the job, sales director. I am the marketing director in the CMO also right now, and also marketing assistant. And I'm also the talent and a lot of copywriting thanks to ChatGPT. So doing a lot in marketing right now that we spend a lot of money on marketing. So it's you got to be very thoughtful with what you're putting out there so that you can promote it correctly. I don't do a lot of legal work anymore. I still have enough cases, and I take really unique, hard, difficult things, but the normal day-to-day cases, I'm not the lawyer working on those. I've been able to hire some I'm so thankful that they're sticking with me through all the changes that the firm has gone through, attorneys, but I don't do a lot of that type of legal work right now. So,
and how was that?
Hopefully that helps.
How was that for you? I know some lawyers have trouble giving up the lawyer identity and doing the legal work, while others really don't have that much trouble at all. How was it for you?
It was not hard. Once we started doing things that were scalable rather than complex, and every single case was different. Like if you do, I would do 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 bond hearings in a day when I was just a solo. I was a beast, and it was so stressful. It wasn't even stressful. It was exhausting, but it was a performance. There's still this like performer inside me that I really go into this performer of, I'm not any different than I am with you right now, but in my mind, it just switches to this other, like, I guess it's like my Mamba mode or whatever, but I love those experiences, but I have a lot of stage fright. And so leading up to it, I have a lot of stress and anxiety, and that's not scalable. So it was like, how can I not be the one who does all this? And that was to do different types of work. That work is very replicable. And for me, anything that's really replicable is super boring for me, because it just is. So handing that over to people who I knew would be so thorough, would look at every single fact and fine tooth comb everything because they are passionate about that. Perfect. They are the right person for that job, because I don't want to be sloppy because I've gotten bored, or because this is like the 15th one of these I've seen today, and start to miss things. So I just don't get excited by replicable tasks.
Yeah, I believe it. So you mentioned marketing, and obviously you have a big firm, you got to do a lot of marketing. So let's talk about what are some of the things you guys do for that? And particularly now that you're launching a new office, I'm sure you're really focused on it, at least for that office.
My view on marketing is you just want to stop the scroll. So, but I'm not going to do that and not be a weirdo. You can do a lot of things that I'm not going to fearmonger either. So I started a TikTok account in January. I'd had it and I was posting other stuff. I at one point thought that I wanted to do law firm coaching, and I dabbled in that enough to be like, no, this is not for me. So my TikTok initially was just like videos talking about growing a firm, which was very inauthentic to me. I don't want to be a boss bitch. I don't want to do any of that stuff. That's not who I am. I started in January when we got a new administration, and that was an outlet for me to be able to say what I wanted to say. And it connected with people. But initially, it was a lot of scary stuff. And so I was constantly like Aaron Parna style, like breaking news, and it was all really negative. And when you give negative to the internet, you will get negative in return. And it was awful. The amount of people I had to block. And my husband was like, hey, you are baiting these people by engaging with them. You get what you give on social media. He has a huge social media following. I was like, all right, I'm going to mix it up, because it's not even who I am. I don't want to be combative. I want to be a source of joy. And so for me, how can I stop the scroll in my marketing? By being different. And there's a lot of negativity out there. I can be a source of joy and positivity. So I talk about good news all the time. And I'm not sticking my head in the sand about stuff. It's not a lot of good news in the immigrant community right now. Every day is something worse than the day before sometimes. But my clients are still getting approvals. And so we're still here meeting our mission, and we're not going to give up on that. right now. So from a marketing perspective, that's what is really fun for me.
And how are you, the firm, navigating all the stuff that's going on? I imagine that clients maybe are scared to reach out. They're scared to stick their neck out, and then who knows, things are slowing down. How are you as a firm dealing with this? Is it affecting, how's it affecting you?
The amount of fear that people are experiencing right now is so sad to be, it doesn't impact me directly. I don't have anyone in my immediate family who's undocumented, but it impacts every single person in my space. I have a connection to so many, even in my day to day. It's not just because it's not your blood doesn't mean it doesn't impact you, right? So you have that, and you want to be a source of hope for people and actually be able to solve problems for people, that then you begin to question and lose confidence because you're not sure you really can help people. And at first it was difficult to navigate that conversation because it used to be, I know if I do this, this, and this, like making chocolate chip cookies, if I follow this recipe and I put them in the oven for 350 for a couple of minutes, it's going to come out gooey and it's going to be delicious. I knew how to make a tea visa or VAWA or whatever kind of case was. I knew how to follow the recipe because we had nailed it. Nowadays, everything feels different. It's like the oven's broken and you're hoping for the best. Your ingredients are the same. The temperatures are the same. But how can you tell someone, I know with a significant amount of confidence, I can get you this result? And it just comes down to transparency with people. It really does. So, and continuing to show up for them.
In my experience,
and now I want chocolate chip cookies.
I know, seriously. I'm going to pivot here. We're going to pivot away from food. I've been eating too many of the holiday season. Just every day there's a new batch coming in. So another thing I want to talk about is just sort of mindset. And growing a firm has been my experience, others I've talked to. You have to grow as a person. If you can't grow, then your firm's not going to grow. What's been your experience, and how have you forced or created the personal growth that has allowed the business and other growth that you've experienced?
Yeah, you got to face a lot of your internal demons depending on, how much you want to grow your firm, because you really are the ceiling of everything in your life. John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, and that your belief in yourself and your worthiness of success, whatever success looks like to you, all of those things are oftentimes the lid in your law firm. Because your law firm is just an extension of your beliefs about yourself and what you can achieve. So I worked with David Nagel. I've worked a lot with Steph Tuss. Those are two people who I think really have helped me work on mindset and stay really solid there. And then it's funny, you talk to your bank. This year's been a volatile year for the stock market and investments and what's going on, with tariffs and everything else. How's that going to impact our retirement and that sort of thing, like the stuff that we've been nesting away. Talk to our bank we're at the private bank at JP Morgan, and one of my friends is the vice president. I told her, how are all of we're in that bank because she's my friend. And she was like, someday you'll be rich enough to be in here. Let's get you in before you're there. And I'm like, thank you so much. I will gladly take your sympathy. But they have so many cool programs, including, because I was like, how are all your rich people who deal with this stuff, how do they keep a healthy mindset around money? She's like, let me connect you with our mindset coach at JP Morgan. And me and my husband got on a call with them. And so there are these, and he's a psychologist who helps people. He said his role was to help people ask better questions. He doesn't give advice. He helps people ask better questions. And it was so helpful. So there are those types of resources. You just kind of got to ask for help. But they have been very, very helpful to me.
Wow. That's cool.
I also I really, really don't read through a lot of the Facebook groups. And when people are talking about they're having a slow month or whatever, it is helpful if something is amiss, like Facebook marketing costs are going up. But I get that information from Louise Scott, not from one individual lawyer who's experiencing this, because that could be a vacuum and I'm not going to buy into that. But when Louise is coaching, 30, 40 immigration firms, consulting with them, he's going to know what the cost of acquisition that's normal for an immigration lawyer is. And so those are also helpful data points.
Yeah. So you've got 4 kids, you've got 3 offices, you're just busy as hell doing all
And
this
a
stuff.
partridge and a pear tree.
How do you manage your day? What kind of routines do you have to get you through and get these and manage the chaos that is this life?
Nothing magical. I wish that there was something cool. I was at an 8-figure firm event. Actually, I feel like I'm like plugging them. I do not work for them or anything like that. But I was at one of their events, and Elrod, I'm not sure his last name, but he wrote The Miracle Morning. And, I have never been able to stick to a routine like that. Like, dang, writing, journaling, and saying affirmations and all this other stuff. I get up, I put on these like eye bag things to try to fix my eye bags and have a cup of coffee and look at my phone on the couch. And that's like my first 30 minutes of waking up. So absolutely what every expert says not to do. And I don't get up at 5 a.m. But we homeschool our kids, we online school them. And so I get to see my kids every morning. I don't have meetings before 9 a.m. A lot of times, most of those meetings will start at 10 a.m. because I just don't want to be rushed in the morning. And I'm going to be late if you do it before 9 anyway. And I might work until 8 o'clock in the evening, but I'll at least know that I got to see my kids when I get to cuddle them when they wake up in the morning on the couch and kind of have a slow start to the day. But I play tennis. We just started this. I play tennis a couple of nights a week at our country club, like in a little clinic with people who are probably all 60 years and older. So I'm like the young kid in the group. That's my exercise for the week, and it has been so much fun. Otherwise, it's just a lot of work. We have a chef who changed our life. She cooks for us, and she's been with us for almost 4 years. I could not function without her. So a ton of support.
Let's talk about the chef. Let's talk about that.
Everyone always is fascinated by that.
Well, I've heard others talk about this, and they're like, it's a game changer. And and I've heard different versions of how it can work. So let's hear your version, and how did you find them, and how does it work? Because this really is on my list, and it fascinates me. But yeah, tell me.
Chef Kat is legendary. She's like a if you watch a show, she's one of the main characters in my life. And she's like, if you know me, she's a main character in my life. She's part of my show, And she used to be the head chef at the Four Seasons, and then she had kids and wanted to be, you work at the Four Seasons, you're working every holiday and everything else. And her husband still works at the Four Seasons. He's head of hospitality there. And so he is always every holiday, Mother's Day, Father's Day, etc. He's got big events he's running. So she wanted to take a step back from that and took private clients. She's worked for billionaires who've flown her around, and they had their own, like on the Four Seasons property where all of the support staff would stay next door to. So she tells these really fascinating stories, but she has no judgment of me. She doesn't need me to be fancy. She doesn't need me to be anything other than me. And that is, I think, the most key. You can really be yourself around her or whoever is going to be in your home, because they're going to see you, depending on how many days a week they're working in your home, they're going to see you a lot. And you cannot have home staff that you have to be on for, because then you're just performing all the time. Like when I come in the firm, I'm not going to have a crappy attitude. I'm going to do my very best not to have a crappy attitude. But when I go home and I've had a bad day, I need to be able to just be me. I cannot keep performing and pretending to be someone else. And I think her being able to really nurture us from a food perspective is like, it is a love language for me. Feed me good food, make me feel good. I feel healthy because of the food that I eat, but I also like have to tell her not to give me huge portions because I will just eat and eat. So that has been incredible. But we found her through a placement agency. So like it was like a domestic worker placement agency out of Scottsdale is where we found her. She was our first interview. And when they do an interview, they do a working interview and they cook for you. And like, you have the experience. And I was like, you're telling me that I could live like this? It was the coolest. And my husband and I quit drinking right when she was starting. And a few months later, she also quit drinking alcohol. And so our sobriety journeys run parallel to each other. And I think we're a little bonded over that too.
So how does it work? Does she come in and cook for for a few days or prep for a few days, or is she there every day? How does it work?
It depends on what you want. So we like just having the house to ourselves a couple of evenings a week, because she does like what she calls dinner service, and that's where she's like plating your meal and bringing it to you, and cooks and cleans up and everything, mops the floor before she leaves, takes out all the trash. Like, it is as if she was never there. We do that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, while she's there on Monday and Wednesday, she cooks a meal for the next day. And it's a heat it back up meal, or it's like grills chicken breast and has it all cut up, and you just got to reheat it in the oven, and a really yummy salad. And she makes a beautiful dressing, we had an Asian chicken salad the other day, and she even made the little crunchy things on top from scratch and had them there for us. And it was just called Crunchies. I was like, I cannot believe how thoughtful she is. She brings fresh flowers for me once a week and puts them on a little vase on our kitchen table. Like, she is just incredible. Many people have tried to woo her, and she fortunately feels the same way about us. But on the nights that she's not there, we reheat the meal or warm up the meal that she's prepped for us. And then on Friday nights, we always do pizza. So we order pizza from our pizza place on Fridays.
Incredible. That's awesome. So, all right, I want to wrap this thing up here. Let's bring us home. But you've been through a lot. You've done a lot. You've grown it from, I guess, nonprofit origins to a big powerhouse firm. For others out there that are building their firms, any pieces of advice that you give them? Anything that maybe you think they should do, or maybe some things maybe they shouldn't do?
I think that destination thinking is your expectations can really ruin your happiness. And I still have a conversation with myself about this regularly. So I'm taking my own medicine. But I thought that by the time that my firm hit a certain revenue level, I wouldn't have to worry about payroll. And I don't really worry about payroll in the sense that, I wonder if I'm going to literally have enough money in the bank. Because now you have things like a line of credit, and you have clients who are on a normal payment plan. And as long as all of them are paying their payment plan, you have more than enough to cover your bills. Those are great things that come with time and sticking in the business for a while, if you do a payment plan structure like I did. But what happens is then your firm grows and you want to scale, which means do the same thing more, but without bringing expenses up to match the more that you are doing. And that has not been something that I have been able to nail. My expenses have continued to go up. My profitability has not necessarily gone up. So don't think that that everything is going to be easier when you hit a certain number, because then when you get there, you're just going to be disappointed rather than like, dude, I'm here. We did it. And now we go back to work again tomorrow and we do it all over again, but it's your problems become easier to solve because you have more access to resources, but you're still trying to solve problems and still trying to piece it all together. So I think that destination thinking, when I get there, when I get to blank, I'll go do this, is really just it's a toxic way to treat your journey.
Great advice. It's really hard. Those goalposts always move. They always move. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
It really does.
Just soak it in and say, wow, 5 years ago, I couldn't believe that I would be here. I feel it. I feel it for sure. That's great advice.
Yeah, you look at like Tom Brady. Man, I bet it was so depressing when he got done and he's like, I'm not going to win any more Super Bowl rings. Like, that's it. What do I do with my life now? And some of that is like having so many goals in front of you that then I don't know Tom Brady, but like, I'm just imagining, I don't know, what did Michael Jordan do that was fulfilling to him when the Bulls just fell apart? What happened next for him? He probably had to spend a lot of time. That's probably why he cries so much. Now he has the time to process everything that went down in those years of his life, including losing his dad. But anyway, it is fun to be where you're at right now. There's some really fun stuff to it, even if you're frustrated, even if it's not quite what you wanted it to be. It's not quite what you wanted it to be because you had expectations, rather than like, I'm going to do my best and the outcome is unknown. Let's see what happens. It's hard to do.
Yeah. So true. That's really, really good, insightful advice there. Hillary, this has been fun. I appreciate you coming on. I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got some things you got to do, but for people out there that want to find you, what's the best way to find you?
I'm on social media. I'm on TikTok @Attorney Hillary. That's probably the easiest way to find and follow along and, learn about immigration law.
Next time you come on, we'll talk about TikTok, because I know nothing about it. So
yeah, it is so much fun.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Hillary, again, thank you. It's been real fun.
Thank you for having me.
And good luck in LA. I know you'll do well.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll keep you posted.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.